There is much to talk about. Let's get to our panel. Joining us from Cleveland is Abbas Hamideh. He's the co-founder of Al-Awda, a global coalition of activists and students in support of Palestinian rights. With us here in Washington is Magid. He is a Washington correspondent for Jewish Insider. And Professor Chuck Freilich is a former Israeli Deputy National Security Advisor. He's also currently a senior fellow at Harvard University's Belfer Center and Kennedy School of Government. And also with us is Khalil Jahshan. He is Executive Director of the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. And that's where I want to start, Khalil. You've been around the Abbas delegation over the last 24 hours. What's the feeling coming out of the meeting? Is there anything new? Was the meeting itself enough, considering what the Trump campaign had been saying in the transition?
Let me preface my answer by saying that both sides, with all due respect, have kind of lowered their expectations to a minimum. So it's not new, but particularly in terms of the hype that we heard from Washington, at least, the Palestinians were very practical. The fact that the meeting took place in spite of Israeli opposition in a way, with all kinds of information or disinformation to try to delegitimize Abbas and his objective in coming here. I think the meeting went well. The sentiment right now, I just came from actually the hotel, where Abbas was meeting with Tillerson just a few minutes ago. They feel that the meeting went well. They're looking forward to more substance in the next few weeks, particularly as the administration begins to flesh out the upcoming visit of the president to the region. And they look forward to continue the conversation with the president and with his staff at the White House.
Abbas in Cleveland, I want to ask you, what do you think the red lines were for the Palestinian Authority when they were talking behind closed doors? Because ahead, President Abbas really talked about a freeze on settlements being, again, the only way they would go back to the table, even though they were saying they were happy to talk to the Israeli Prime Minister under the auspices of the Trump administration. That seemed to be a red line. Has anything changed?
Well, I think it's all rhetoric. I've seen the talk with Mahmoud Abbas. They're basically reiterating the two-state solution, the same old rhetoric that's been going on. I can tell you, though, that as far as the Palestinian people are concerned, we are ready for peace. We are ready for peace based on justice. You cannot have peace based on the same rhetoric that's been going on since the early 90s with the Oslo Accord. So the Palestinians have been in peace negotiations for long over 20 years now. So I believe that there needs to be more substance than the rhetoric with the two-state solution, with the continuing, basically the American administrations, the past presidents, who have always either touched something or nothing at all, as we saw the Obama administration, which took no interest in any real peace process as far as the Palestinians. So the Palestinian people welcome peace with substance, peace with justice. It's not an ongoing thing that we just want to discuss for the rest of our lives. So the Palestinian people on the ground and all over the world, like myself, are looking forward to something tangible. We are coming up on the Nakba, which is the Palestinian catastrophe of the Palestinian people, on May 15th. So we've been waiting for 69 years. Yes, we want peace. We want peace with international law. We want peace with returning the refugees back home. That's the peace that I'm looking forward. I'm not sure that me and Mahmoud Abbas are on the same lines as far as real peace talks go.
Aaron, here in the studio, obviously Israel watching very closely. What do you think they made of the meeting today, and what would you think their red lines were in terms of if negotiations are to restart, how they happen, and what the Trump administration needs to do?
Well, I think Israel was very happy for 2 points. Number one is the issue of incitement was raised, and that's a topic that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly discussed. Is
this about payments to prisoners and Palestinians who've carried out attacks and then have all died, and then to their families?
Well, according to the Israeli narrative, there's two parts of it. One is they discuss incitement in Palestinian schools, and they say this is a major contributing factor towards the violence in the recent wave for the past year and a half. So number one, they were pleased about that was raised. Number two is they were also happy that Sean Spicer mentioned at the press conference today about the issue of payments towards the families of prisoners who Israelis would refer to as terrorists. So I think on that regards, they were happy. In addition to that, the issue of settlements was not raised. So that's an ongoing tension between U.S.
Well, not publicly, we don't.
Not publicly. In terms of what the administration decided to publicly stress, incitement, yes. Payment to terrorists, families of terrorists, yes. Settlements, no. So from an Israeli perspective, these are positive developments.
Interesting. Chuck, before I get to you, I want to play a clip back in February when Prime Minister Netanyahu was here and Trump's position, Donald Trump's position on the two-state versus one-state solution. It was a very interesting comment. Let's just play that.
I thought for a while the two-state looked like it may be the easier of the two. But honestly, if Bibi and if the Palestinians, if Israel and the Palestinians are happy, I'm happy with the one they like the best.
Chuck, is this flexibility or a misunderstanding where the conflict is?
I don't think it's really either. I think it's another case where the president has stated positions from which he then backed off as he came to understand the issue.
Is it helpful?
Is it helpful for him to be saying that? No. I think there is only one solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that is a two-state solution. And unfortunately, we have not been able to achieve it to date, but that doesn't mean that it isn't the right way to go. And I think what we could really be focusing on here isn't what we don't really know what happened behind the closed doors in the talks today. The question is, what do we have to do to reach a final settlement? And one of the major issues is, of course, the settlements issue, but I think that there is a major international misunderstanding in the sense that Israel could agree to stop settlements completely, 100% today, and we actually wouldn't be much closer to an agreement than we are now, because there are at least 2 or 3 other issues which are far more difficult than the settlements issue. Israel has actually offered on 3 occasions in the last decade and a half to withdraw from essentially 100% of the West Bank, and in so doing, to dismantle most of the settlements. The really hard issues are Jerusalem, the refugee issue, and we heard one of the speakers before speaking about a return of, and if he meant a full return of refugees to Israel, then that's an absolute non-starter. That means we'll never achieve peace. And the third issue is recognition of Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, which the Palestinians refused to do. Those are the really difficult issues. Those are the ones that we should be exploring and seeing if we can find ways to resolve them. And I think we should also be forthright in saying that at the moment, and unfortunately for the foreseeable future, we don't have leaderships on either side that are both interested and capable of reaching a deal.
Your last point is well taken, but Khalil was shaking his head throughout your rundown there, and I want him to be able to respond, because there is a feeling internationally as well that the settlement freeze has to come because that's the easiest thing to do and would create trust. And then the thorny problems, as you quite rightly say, about Jerusalem and status, about the refugee and the unique nature of Israel can be addressed later on. Khalil, you were shaking your head. What's your response there to Chuck?
Well, I mean, I don't know where to start, frankly. He listed all kinds of items that are not true and objectionable, actually.
Every word was 100% true.
Thank you. You're always true, 100%.
This is definitely an opinion show, so let's go, Khalil.
Basically, these are final status or permanent status issues. We all know there is no need to reinvent the wheel in terms of how to solve the Palestine question. There is a conventional wisdom that has been out there for 20, 30, or even more years. And I think if Abbas did anything right during his visit, is he reiterated publicly in front of the President of the United States what it takes. He talks about the concept of the two-state solution. He talks about the concept of a Palestinian state, independent Palestinian state with its capital in East Jerusalem. He specified what are the basic ingredients where there is a consensus throughout the international community in this regard. And I thought he did his case, even though I do not necessarily agree 100% with all of Abbas's policies, but I thought he did his people a good service by basically putting the dots on the line and putting, first of all, informing the President of the United States, who clearly, I think, judging from his statement today in the press conference, he didn't know the basics of the conflict. The only thing he could search deeply and comment on was the fact that the Palestinians have the responsibility to do basically security coordination with the Israelis. I mean, there are plenty of things that have been done and continue to be done and should be done that could bring the two parties together. But I thought the Abbas's statement was very substantive, very detailed, specified the issues that need to be focused on, while the president talked in generalities. So nothing was started today or achieved today other than the fact that there is a will to start, again, a process. But the Palestinians, as Mr. Hamideh said earlier, are not interested, and I agree with him, are not interested in a process. They are interested in peace. And as long as occupation continues and whatever process is initiated does not aim at that, then we're going to face the same problem. By the way, this attempt, if we want to call it the Trump peace plan in the Middle East, this is number 78, the 78th attempt at peacemaking since 1937.